Today on Sports Talk Philadelphia, we take a look at the Birds as they come off their bye week and they get ready to square off with Dallas on Sunday night. Meanwhile, the Flyers go from flying high to crashing on the runway with a 5-game losing streak. And then finally, we take a look at a Flyers great who got honored this past week at the Wells Fargo Center. This is Sports Talk Philadelphia, and it's starting right now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new edition of Sports Talk Philadelphia here on LaSalle TV. I'm Tyler Harper, and as you can see, changed things up a little bit here and there. Just tweaks, making the format a little more interesting. Why not? Joining me today, we got Anthony Fleet and Kevin Cook to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles, and later on, we have Zach Granitsky coming on to talk Philadelphia Flyers a little bit later in the show. But first, let's start with the Eagles, of course. Again, as I mentioned in the intro, coming off their bye week and coming off an interesting game against Carolina, if you want to call it that. Let's take a look at those stats as the Eagles fall to Carolina on Sunday night, 27-16 being the final. Jonathan Stewart really having a good game, carving the Eagles up, 24 carries, 125 yards. But the Eagles had some good pieces in this game as the secondary got 3 interceptions and Ryan Matthews 6 carries, 97 yards, and a touchdown. But the main thing I want to talk about to begin this game, and I'm sure, Anthony, you're going to want to go here, there, and a couple other places with this team. But John Clark reported that as the Eagles were entering the locker room, he was waiting outside, and he heard someone say, quote, "Catch the bleeping ball." Yeah, that pretty much about sums up what Eagles fans were thinking about this game, right? It was certainly a main storyline in this game, and really all season, with receivers not being able to make big catches.
Right, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say it's not only been the Carolina game, but especially the past few weeks, and especially with Jordan Matthews, which is a really big surprise. But we sort of get caught up when the Eagles win. We kind of forget about the flaws that this team has, and it really doesn't come out until we see them lose a game. And for one thing, of course, the drops by the wide receivers is really frustrating, whether it be Jordan Matthews, Miles Austin. You can go up and down the receiving list.
And it's interesting, too, with Miles Austin because he caught basically everything until that last play where they tried to convert on 4th down, and then he kind of realizes he's Miles Austin again and drops the ball.
Yeah, really. It's unbelievable. It's so frustrating to watch. You also have, as you said, Ryan Matthews, he had a good game. He only had 6 carries for 97 yards. Why isn't he getting the ball more? You know, there's just so many different questions to ask. Caleb Sturgis misses another field goal. It's like, come on. If the Eagles had a reliable field goal kicker, that would make all of our lives much easier as Eagles fans. And also, Byron Maxwell was struggling to cover Philly Brown and Ted Ginn Jr. Are you kidding me? Those are not exactly A receivers. And Byron Maxwell is supposed to be an A cornerback. So there's a lot of questions still to be answered, and they really get exacerbated when the Eagles lose.
That was a really big word, a SAT word there. But I definitely sympathize. Kevin, your thoughts on the Carolina game?
This is actually the first game where the Eagles defense didn't try to help or didn't bail out the Eagles offense. Many times we saw, it was still a close game toward the end of the game, but many times we saw the Eagles defense hold the running backs and make it more difficult for the opposing offense to drive down the field, but not so in this case as Stewart, I believe he had 1 touchdown, and Cam Newton also had a rushing touchdown. It's the first time where they let up 2 rushing touchdowns in a game and the first to a running back, so the Eagles defense really didn't do as well, and that really hurt the Eagles offense.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, I mean, again, Carolina is 6-0. They're the only undefeated team left in the NFC. The other 3 undefeated teams are all scattered among the AFC. But is Carolina really as advertised? I mean, obviously, 6-0, it's nothing to sneeze at in the NFL. It really isn't, because every professional football game is tough. But, I mean, Fleet, you mentioned earlier, Byron Maxwell struggling to cover guys like Philly Brown and Ted Ginn Jr. not exactly A-list receivers. Heck, Kelvin Benjamin tore his ACL in training camp, and he's out for the year, and he was supposed to be their number one. So, I mean, as good as Carolina is, like, how frustrating was it for the Eagles to be that close with this undefeated team and having a chance to, if they were able to have a couple more things go right, knock this team off?
It was frustrating in a sense, just because Carolina, yeah, they're undefeated, but they are as advertised, to answer your question, because they come out and say, we're going to pound the ball, we're going to run it down your throats. And we have the Panthers, they have a physical quarterback in Cam Newton, and also with Stewart, he's a very physical runner. So they come as advertised. They're not going to be flashy with passes. But what was really frustrating is the fact that the Eagles defense, though they may have their little bit of struggles, they forced 3 turnovers, but the offense only scored 3 points off of those turnovers, which is inexcusable, especially when those turnovers gave the Eagles offense very good field position. You have to convert those into points, into touchdowns, and the Eagles just failed to do that. And that was really one of the biggest reasons why they lost this game.
Kevin?
The Panthers are definitely a top team now. Their defense has kept them in the games, and just as the Eagles' defense has. And that's kind of the difference in the teams right now, is the Eagles and the Panthers. The Panthers' offense is doing what it has to do to make those close games into victories, and the Eagles' offense struggles as was 3 plays, I think, in a row. Sproles had a drop, but they got bailed out by like a penalty. And then Ertz had a drop later on, and then Miles Austin had a drop on 4th down. And they were all catchable balls, and they hit their hands and just right to the ground. That's the difference between a team that's undefeated right now and a team that is trying to stay alive in a very weak division.
Yeah, very weak division is really almost an understatement. I mean, thank goodness there's like the AFC South that's a weaker division right now, because the NFC East is not that great up and down. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. But Kevin, we'll start with you with this. I mean, obviously we've talked about the drops, inconsistencies on defense. What is it about this team that they can't play a complete game? No matter in some facets they'll play a complete game, in other facets like one little thing will happen and they'll just get derailed. What is it about consistency that's holding up this team? I know that's the $1 million question.
Yeah, that really is. It could be the coaching or leadership, and at this point you kind of have to put it on the coach, because if he can't, he's the one that's in charge of putting out a product that's supposed to be consistent and good, and if that's not going to happen, then you have to blame Chip. But it's not just Chip Kelly's fault to make sure that the players have to produce basically, and Chip Kelly can't make them produce. He can only do so much.
Yeah, all right, and now we're going to shift focus. We're going to shift focus to the current quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles, and Sam Bradford. As we take a look at his stats for the year so far, I think we kind of see they are what they are, but 170 for 274 passing, 1,776 yards, 9 touchdowns, 10 INTs, 4 fumbles, a so-so quarterback rating of 76.4. And, of course, there was the story that came out this week. I mean, Howard Eskin reported it, so take it with a grain of salt. But that he rejected a contract before opening day, 4 years, $72 million before opening day. He declined the report this week, Bradford did, saying, no, it must have gotten lost in the mail. How thankful are we that got lost in the mail if that's the case? Because I don't know about you guys, but I don't see enough to back Sam Bradford as my quarterback right now.
Yeah, I agree. I'm extremely thankful that didn't happen, because, of course, he played very well in the preseason, so you're like, man, maybe we should sign this guy to at least a medium-term extension, because he showed flashes. But again, as we all know now, in retrospect, it was only preseason. And he came out and wildly underperformed to what a lot of people built him up to be. And of course, you want to see him improve. And there's the excuses of him coming off of 2 ACL surgeries, and there's just a long list of excuses for this guy. But at the end of the day, it's week 8. It's going to be Sunday Night Football with the Eagles and Cowboys. He needs to come out and perform really well. And maybe if he can perform as well in the second half of the season, maybe he can start to earn some of that trust and respect to get at least a reasonable contract.
Well, I hope he earns that soon, because there's been other rumors too, as we can see. If we can take a look at this guy's stats, Colin Kaepernick. Yeah, Colin Kaepernick, 144 for 243 passing, 1,615 yards, 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 5 fumbles, and a 78.8 QB rating. There have been rumors, and they've been swirling a little more and more about the possibility of in the offseason the Eagles trying to maybe make a trade for Kaepernick, who of course is a more mobile quarterback, and everyone talks about the more mobile the quarterback, the better he is for Chip Ip's system. Guys, Fleet will go to you first and then quickly to Kevin. Do you want to see the Eagles try to trade for Colin Kaepernick, or should we look at other options?
1,000% yes, try to trade for Colin Kaepernick because he's exactly what Chip Kelly needs. He can run the read option, and that would just open up so much more of Chip Kelly's playbook, just having that dual threat quarterback. Because you saw flashes of it with Michael Vick, but Michael Vick isn't he doesn't have the physique of Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick 6'5",
Yeah, he's not the
and runs.
Plus, he's not the Michael Vick of old. He's getting up there in age.
Exactly. So I think Kaepernick, he needs to change the scenery just to kind of reboot his career. And I think pairing him up with Chip Kelly would be kind of a perfect fit.
Kevin, would you want to see the Eagles trade for Cap?
It would be nice to see Kaepernick here, but with that being said, I don't know if he's technically the perfect fit for this Chip Kelly offense. I understand that he can run the read option, and that's something that Chip Kelly hasn't had.
Right.
But Chip Kelly probably had the opportunity. Like, this is the NFL. We were talking about this last year. Kaepernick possibly to the Eagles, and we were even talking about Mariota, even though that was a bit more of a stretch. But I'm sure that there was a price to have Kaepernick for, and the Eagles just thought it was too steep. It's definitely going to be going down now with his getting benched, but I don't technically know if Chip Kelly actually wants the running quarterback like everybody thinks he does.
Yeah, see, I internally I battle back and forth on this because, I mean, yeah, sure, it'd be nice to have a mobile quarterback. It'd be nice to have a guy who can extend the play at least a little bit.
He had the opportunity to keep Mike Vick, but he decided to let him go. I mean, Nick Foles did play great and all,
yeah.
But we chose Sanchez over Mike Vick.
But as Tyler said, Michael Vick, he was up there in age, and he was really a turnover machine, and he was also he was injury prone. You know, he couldn't play a full season. Colin Kaepernick, he proves he could play a full season, and he's definitely an upgrade over what we've seen from Sam Bradford so far.
Yes.
Yeah, and speaking of Sam Bradford, I mean, keep in mind, you traded for this guy in the offseason. You got rid of Nick Foles. And, I mean, knowing that he has a year left on his contract. So, I mean, yeah, I guess you could consider that a safety. But if you decide not to extend him at the end of the year and you go whatever way, two questions. One, which way do you go? I mean, obviously trading for Kaepernick, I guess, is an option. But then also, too, how kind of stupid is that going to make your organization look? Because Chip Kelly, as GM, made this deal expecting it to work out. And, I mean, it kind of makes you look bad, at least in my opinion. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. Giving up that second-round pick, if Bradford continues to play as he has, it definitely makes the organization and Chip Kelly especially look bad. As far as what direction they're going to go in, Bradford is probably going to get money somewhere else. Like maybe Cleveland might want to overpay. Other teams with no quarterback will overpay for Bradford. And the question is, will the Eagles see if the quarterback, basically the rise of the quarterback is, the rise of money for the quarterback is worth it?
Yeah, and just a quick comment. I think the trade for Sam Bradford was sort of a piece in order to try to persuade Tennessee to try to get Mariota. So that's really what I think it is. I think Mariota, Chip Kelly wanted Mariota, and Bradford was going to be a piece to try to get Mariota.
All right, real quick, we're going to go through our prediction polls. We all picked the Eagles this week against Dallas Cowboys. I have the Eagles winning 24-17. I can finally pick the Eagles again since I picked Carolina and Carolina won. And Jordan Matthews, he needs to have a statement game. He needs to be the #1 receiver. He needs to show it on the field Sunday night against the Cowboys. He needs to show that he's there. Anthony Fleet, 27-13 Birds. Walter Thurman, real quick, is your standout star.
Yeah, I think he's going to. I think the defense overall is going to play really well, but I think the secondary is going to create some turnovers, and I think Walter Thurman will have a pick six, and it'll really change the momentum for the game, carrying the Eagles to a victory over the Cowboys.
All right, and Kevin Cook, you also picked the Birds, 27-10. DeMarco Murray, your standout star. Real quick, give me it.
Murray had a great game against Dallas. Well, not great. Nobody really played great. But on the one drive where the Eagles' offense really looked good, it was basically all because DeMarco Murray had the hurdle and then the 15-yard penalty. So I think DeMarco is going to blow up this week.
All right, that does it for Eagles Talk. Thank you, Kevin, for joining us. We will take a quick commercial break, but when we get back, we'll have Zach Granitsky on desk, and we'll talk some Philadelphia Flyers. So stick around. We'll be right back.
Today, Eric Almirola behind the wheel. It's a 43 car.
We all have a role to play here at Richard Petty Motorsports. We respect each other, work hard, and that helped us get the big win in Daytona. My partners in the U.S. Air Force also know that it takes a team to make each mission a success. Your coworkers, family, and friends are your team. Treat them with respect, and together you can accomplish great things. This message is brought to you by the U.S. Air Force.
Today, a new creature walks among us, terrorizing innocent citizens. Until this threat can be contained, we must all be on the lookout for the dreaded digital deadwalkers.
Dude!
They're not looking out for you.
Engage!
A public service safety message from the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, who want to keep everyone well connected with strong, healthy bones.
Vision loss is not something that you feel until it happens.
Most people lose their vision from diseases like macular degeneration and glaucoma, not at birth.
3 million Americans have glaucoma, and half don't even know it.
11 million people in the United States have macular degeneration.
So many eye disorders can be treated if caught early.
Make a plan today to get your eyes checked.
Visit brightfocus.org to learn more.
Drownings are a leading cause of death for young children. Simple safety steps are the best way to prevent these tragedies. Make sure kids learn how to swim. Always watch them in and around water. Properly fence all pools and stay away from drains. Consider the steps you take, then add a few more. Because you never know which pool safety step will save a life until it does. Simple steps save lives. To learn some new ones, visit poolsafely.gov.
Welcome back to Sports Talk Philadelphia. Again, Tyler Harper here. And down at the end, we have Zach Granitsky, super hockey fanatic, joining us. Zach, thank you for joining us to talk some Flyers.
I'm glad to be here. Like 12 minutes, I guess.
Thanks, buddy. So the Philadelphia Flyers started out pretty good, I'd say, better than expectations. Then not so good, as we'll see here. 5-game losing streak, not exactly the best for the Orange and Black right now, as 8 goals scored, 19 goals against. Guys, this is a team that everyone was saying the offense is going to keep this team in games this year, because they were saying the defense is going to look shaky. Where's the offense gone? Let's start there.
Well,
I know. Speaking of $1 million questions,
right? The Flyers, they just stink right now. 5-game losing streak. They can't get any offense generated. Mark Streit is their leading scorer right now with only 7 points.
And he's a defenseman.
Exactly. That's not good. Jake Voracek, he doesn't have any goals yet scored in the season. He only has 4 assists. Claude Giroux, he's playing pretty well, but he can't do it by himself. This isn't basketball where a star can virtually carry you, because with hockey stars, they're only on the ice for a third of the game.
Right.
So it's really important for role players like Sean Couturier and Michael Raffel and people of that nature. They need to step their game up, but it's just hard to ask, because quite frankly, them guys like them, they stink. Like they have a limited ceiling, and there's really not much you can rely on them for. So it's just a matter of them just putting together some kind of momentum, some kind of a hot streak in order to get things turned back around.
I don't know if I'd say they stink.
They stink.
You know what? All right. Zach, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Claude Giroux, he's one of your top players, so you want him on the ice as much as possible. In 12 games, he has 12 penalty minutes. So that's almost as if he's in the penalty box for 1 minute a game. Obviously, that's impossible. But, well, I mean, unless the opposing team scored within a minute of the penalty. But it's pretty much impossible. And then Jake Voracek, 50 shots on net. None of those 50 shots went in.
We'll get to Jake in a little bit. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's just kind of tough right now. But, I mean, this is about, at least I think, the Flyers team we'd expected. I mean, a little more offensive output. But, I mean, you kind of figured with Dave Haskell taking the reins and Ron Hextall still trying to get bad contracts off the books, that there was going to be some growing pains with this team. They're still in somewhat of a rebuilding process, as much as Flyers fans don't really like admitting that they're in a rebuilding process. But this seems to me like the team we about expected, right?
Yeah, and it's understandable where they are right now. It's just frustrating because in other sports, Philly fans have to watch the worst team in baseball and the worst team in basketball. And now that the Eagles are underperforming, Philly fans are just overwhelmed with losing, and it's frustrating to watch. And I think there's just more of a false optimism for the Flyers, just because the other teams, they have to experience so much losing with the other teams. And so as far as the Flyers are concerned, I guess you just have to be patient, just like we have to be patient with the Phillies and the Sixers. And now maybe even the Eagles if they can't get their problem situated.
Yeah, it's really tough for all sports teams right now. But let's talk about Jake Voracek since we brought him up earlier. And you guys, well, you brought up the stats. 4 assists, 0 goals on 50 shots. 50 shots and on goal. So it at least made some contact with the goalie and no dice. This is a guy who not only was obviously the leading scorer on the Flyers last year, but one of the top scorers in the NHL last year. And now he's off to a slow start. I mean, obviously he hasn't even scored yet. So what do you guys think is bothering Jake? And Zach, we'll start with you, because to be honest, like, it seems to me that he's forcing things and he's just getting frustrated.
Well, I'm curious, you know how there's that Heisman curse, so to speak?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, Voracek got that award recently. I just saw the news yesterday.
Oh, yeah, the Philadelphia Sports Writers
Outstanding
Award.
Pro Athlete of the Year for Philadelphia. So maybe
you think there's a curse with that?
Maybe there's a curse with that, and it's getting to his head? I don't know.
I mean,
'Cause
perhaps.
I hope not.
I mean, he led the team in assists last year and points, so.
Yeah, it's really hard to explain his lack of offensive output because, as you said, he was one of the top scorers in the NHL last year. And, you know, maybe at this point we just have to start finding some excuses, but maybe just realize, like, he's just not getting it done, and maybe the puck just isn't really bouncing his way as far as getting shots on goal. Because other guys are scoring. It's not maybe not a whole lot, but they haven't been playing world-class goalies. So it's kind of hard to figure why this is happening. And maybe that sports curse that Zach's talking about, maybe that's an explanation. But who knows at this point?
And it's funny, too, because, I mean, you mentioned they haven't been playing world-class goalies lately, but a couple of the wins they got earlier this season were against Corey Crawford and Henrik Lundqvist. Guess what? Those goalies are pretty close to world-class, if not world-class.
Right.
So, I mean, let's talk about that, actually, the fact that we've heard this last year a lot with the Flyers, but do they play down to their competition? Because for some reason, they can get hyped up for these games against the Rangers and Blackhawks, but when they play teams like the Devils, the Sabres, who they lose twice to, and even the Edmonton Oilers, who are just a mess right now, they can't get up the energy and consistency to win games.
Yeah, and you would think that was a coaching problem last year with Coach Berube. But now that Coach Hacksaw's here, the same thing is applying. So really, remember after the first game, the Flyers players, they held a players-only meeting.
Yeah, maybe the 7-1 loss to Florida.
Maybe they needed to have those more often because they played well against that. And as you said, they played better competition. But that's something that they really have to look internally at and say, hey, you know, we're playing pretty well against good competition, but we have to start burying these teams that are below us in the standings.
Yeah, all right. And so moving from the current product on the ice, we're going to talk a little bit about a guy who got honored this past week at the Wells Fargo Center before the Flyers-Sabres game, and that, of course, is Danny Briere. I was there covering the game, and during the first intermission, Danny Briere gave a little press conference. So here's a little bit of what Danny Briere had to say about the city of Philadelphia.
It was a blast playing here. I loved how passionate this city got for the Flyers, especially, you know, in the spring when it was playoff time. That run in 2010, going all the way. I mean, then the city was going to the beat of our team. That was a special time, you know. And I don't know, this is still home. This is home for me now. So it's pretty cool to find out that, you know, the fans love you.
So there you have it, Danny Briere, ever the classy guy, always a great thing to say about Philadelphia. And let's talk about his stats, because on the ice, he was really a fantastic player. 307 goals, 389 assists, so 696 career points. And his playoff stats, of course, with the nickname Mr. Playoffs, 53 goals and 63 assists in 124 games. That's very impressive. That's getting close to a point a game in the playoffs, which is phenomenal for any player. But Fleet, we'll start with you. How impactful was Danny Briere both on and off the ice in the city of Philadelphia? Because he was loved by basically everyone.
Yeah, he was, and he provided great leadership off the ice. And as far as on the ice, he was very productive, as you saw, all of his points, especially in the playoffs.
Zach, real quick, your thoughts on Danny Briere?
Well, his nickname's Mr. Playoffs, so obviously he's producing very well in the playoffs. And one thing I'll never forget about Danny Briere is his celebration, you know, with the
dropping the knee in the fist bump.
It's great. Right. It's a great celebration.
Absolutely. Danny Briere, a great guy, and obviously will be missed, and he's a front office guy in the Flyers now, so that'll be cool to see. Now we move on to the Fast Five, of course. everyone's favorite segment, just 5 rapid-fire questions for just you two this week. So, Fleet, we'll start with you. During the Sixers-Cavs game the other night, LeBron gets his 25,000th career point, of course. Youngest player to do so, I believe 20th in history. Gets a standing ovation from the Philly fans, yet the Cavs broadcast, for some reason, they still decided to bring up the throwing snowballs at Santa Claus incident. I know you're probably passionate about this, but real quick, it's time to get over the snowballs at Santa thing, right?
Yeah, those two Cavs broadcasters are idiots. They need to just get over it. They gave their player a standing ovation, so what more do they want? Seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so sick of that reference. That happened before most, if not all of us, were born.
Exactly.
Whatever. Zach, trivia question. This I just found because I was just looking on the internet the other night.
Right.
What is Walter Thurman's middle name? And here's a hint to make things easier. His middle name is the first name of one of the Eagles' wide receivers.
Nelson?
It is not Nelson. No, it is Riley.
Riley? Okay.
Walter Riley Thurman III. What a name. Anthony Fleet, who will be the next Philly team to make the playoffs?
The Eagles, because I think they're going to win the division this season.
Yeah, so they'll get to the playoffs by default. Yeah. I'll live with that. You know what? I'll live with that. And Zach, besides Jake Voracek, who in the Flyers needs to step up?
Who in the Flyers needs to step up? I hate to say it, but both Steve Mason and Michael Neuvert, because right now both of their statistics are mediocre, both of them. Yeah, so it's a goalie battle all over again.
Steve Mason stinks too.
Very inconsistent. And finally, Anthony Fleet, the Phillies, they hired Matt Glentak a couple weeks ago, who was the assistant GM in Anaheim. He worked with Andy McPhail in Baltimore years back. Do you like the hire?
Yeah, anybody's better than Ruben Amaro Jr., that's for sure. So,
maybe we'll see some analytics in this organization.
Probably, and he's a young guy too. What's he, only 35? So he'll bring some youth and energy into this Phillies organization, which is what they need.
Absolutely.
So hopefully they get things turned around quickly for the sake of Philadelphia fans.
All right, well, that's going to do it for our show this week. Thank you to Anthony and thank you to Zach for joining me. But, of course, you can stay with us on social media, as you should. Facebook.com/SportsTalk Philadelphia, LaSalle TV Philly on Twitter, LaSalle TV at lasalle.edu for email. Full episodes on YouTube, youtube.com/LaSalle56TV. And finally, online, lasalle.edu/LaSalle TV. Remember to never stop exploring. So that does it for us this week. I hope you like the tweaks of the format, and if you don't or you have suggestions, hey, let us know. You just heard our social media credits. But anyway, that does it for our show. I'm Tyler Harper. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.